Welcome to Blind Shovel, an arts and music podcast. Today I had the pleasure of interviewing my dear friend Niv Bavarsky. He's an incredibly accomplished illustrator as well as a great musician. We've collaborated for many, many years now, and he's a sweet man. You'll see what I mean.
This is not in the podcast. Are we? Yeah. What is this? The podcast?
Oh, maybe it just started, but it definitely didn't start before.
Okay, how about it starts?
I
now,
think
the Michael Olivo show.
Yeah.
Michael Olivo show.
Is that the music you're envisioning?
Michael Olivo show.
God, that'd be embarrassing.
Does your podcast have a name?
No, not yet. And I'm definitely opposed to. I have this thing about galleries that are just named after the person. I really hate that.
Calling people out?
I mean, I told Jonathan Levine I feel that way.
It's like almost every gallery.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But what'd you do today in terms of work? I assume you worked for YouTube?
I did work for YouTube. Just technically, I worked for Advanced Systems Group.
Wow. That's fucking ridiculous.
I just had meetings, did some drawing. Yeah.
So how long have you worked at YouTube at this point?
For a little over a year.
Really?
A year and a few weeks. Yeah. Year happened quickly.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
And how's that going?
Went by fast. It's going pretty good,
I saw your $1 billion drawing or whatever.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Thanks.
Do you feel great satisfaction when you see that? What is that feeling like?
Honestly, it's fun to see those go up. They're probably like the most eyeballs that get on my work at any time, which is kind of a funny thing to think about.
I think are we talking?
Millions of people see it.
Yeah, I was thinking, are we talking billions? But I don't know how many people use YouTube every day.
I would guess millions.
Oh, is it not? Are those images not seen across the world? Is YouTube different in each country?
YouTube is a little different in each country, and those particular things, like they go to certain markets, but not everyone. It depends on the specific thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That one is probably all over the place.
That one was probably in most of the world.
And how'd you end up working there?
It was pretty random. I think I applied for another job at Gizmodo, just kind of like I saw a listing and I was like, freelancing is becoming less and less stable. So I saw like a job opening and applied for it and then actually didn't hear anything and didn't think too much about it. Mm-hmm. And then like a year later, maybe like 6 months later or something, just like a month after my dad died, I got an email from a recruiter asking if I'd be open for a job. And at the time, a job seemed like a good idea.
Right. It was necessary.
Yeah, it was necessary. Just like, life circumstances had changed and needed to help out the family. Wanted something that would be stable. And it's like my first time doing that. First time having like a normal adult job.
Is that your first time in general?
Kinda.
Like first full-time salary job?
Yeah. First. So I've been, freelancing for over 10 years.
Wow, how strange.
Yeah.
That it basically had to happen. In some sense.
The way it happened, it almost really felt like some sort of sign. I don't know how to think about this, but I felt like dad died, and then like the family really needed help, and then help came.
Right, because you had applied beforehand, before he had died.
Well, no, I applied to just some other random job.
Oh, weird.
yeah, I applied to a different thing, and then like my info got passed along somehow. And so I just, the person who was hiring for the YouTube, the ASG job, knew the person who was hiring for the Gizmodo job. So
you've been forced into a type of maturity by these events.
Yeah, my life changed a lot really fast. And I mean, yeah, you said it. I was kind of forced into a circumstance that made me make more adult decisions, I guess.
Yeah, and integrated into the art making as well.
Yeah.
That's something I'm definitely interested, like as you could hear in that Jesse Fillingham podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the realities of art, the pragmatic directions they end up going, not out of some aesthetic or conceptual concern, but out of life itself.
Sure.
I don't know what you imagined when you were a kid. We can get into that. I think that's always interesting. It sounds like both of us drew when we were young, although I know you had a musical inclination. You know what? Let's talk about that because Dory's important. I hope to interview him one day.
You should.
But I like the way that it sounds like in some ways you economically decided Dory's so good at music. I love music, but maybe I should focus on this visual output.
I mean, it wasn't such a. It was more of like an egoic decision as a child.
Right.
I played music as a teenager, and I still make music, and I love it. But he was so good, for people who are listening. My older brother is a highly accomplished jazz classical musician who plays all sorts of things, and he's highly technically competent. And I think seeing that when I was a kid, like I didn't want to compete. I didn't want to have to like take piano lessons to try to achieve what he achieved. And also, I was drawing and I loved it. So I think I did make a kind of decision about where to put my energy based on that. Like, okay, this is where I can shine.
How much older is he than you?
He's 6 years older.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
So he was far more competent than you in general.
Well,
something
sure.
Something I could relate to.
By the time I was a little kid, he was like ripping on piano.
Right.
Yeah.
But he wasn't drawing?
No, I mean, actually, when he was a child, he was a very good draftsman. I look at his childhood drawings and I'm really impressed. There's this one funny incident where he had done some kind of ballpoint pen drawing of a golfer, and I vandalized it.
Nice.
Like, I took it and like scratched it out. I was like, this is my thing.
So it served many functions. Art.
Yeah.
You could vandalize with it.
I could vandalize with it.
I never thought of it like that, but it sounds like really literally it was a territorial decision. For me, having 4 older brothers, none of them had that territory locked down. Mm. So maybe that's where it came from as well, a way to be distinct.
I mean, I do think for people who start making art when they're really young, it is, I mean, with the exception of people who are maybe forced into it, I think it is a kind of like claiming of territory, something to like find respect with.
Yeah, and thus it gets a little confusing when you think you found respect or you do find respect in a certain scene. Or maybe your self-esteem is validated in different areas. It's certainly over the course of my life it's forced me to reconsider why I was doing it.
Sure.
So from the beginning, when you were really young, what did you think art was, and what did you think you were going to be doing?
Well, I developed this obsession with drawing at a pretty young age. And I didn't really think about career.
Okay. Yeah.
I wasn't so practical, and frankly, neither was my family. They didn't like raise me with the thought that you have to like find a thing to make money. I don't know. They encouraged our interests and our passions, and luckily I was able to make some living with it. But I just had this fixation on drawing, and I was a pretty indoor kid. I'm not like fully an introvert, but I do really like being alone and just doing my thing and being in my brain, and I always have. So I was always just nose in a sketchbook. And it wasn't until I was in college that I had any real notion of what a career was. I knew that my drawing approach was like cartoony, and so like I didn't think I'd be a painter. But I also didn't know anything about illustration as a career path until, I went to college and met illustrators, saw what that was.
And you've pretty much lived that out over that decade.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the college I went to, Maryland Institute College of Art, was at the time very focused on editorial illustration. That was like, I think that was the path that was presented to us as a career. And it kind of suited me. I liked it. And so for years I was pursuing editorial illustration until sort of other avenues opened themselves up, and now I do less of that.
Right. What do you do? What is your technical title at YouTube?
My technical title is illustrator.
Oh, so you're still doing it.
Yeah, I am still technically an illustrator.
You think you'll die an illustrator?
What does that mean?
I mean, you think you'll just keep... Yeah, no, if you look 10 years ahead, professionally, I know, again, your circumstances have changed. You've been forced to be more financially responsible. Mm-hmm. But do you have any vision of that?
Well, in about 20 years, the water wars will start, Michael, and I'll have to become a paladin.
That's how you see yourself?
No.
A paladin?
I'm joking. I do not anticipate stopping making art as long as I'm capable of doing it. And
could you ever see doing music for a full-time job?
I'd be interested. In the past few years, I started doing some professional music composition things and had good experiences with it. My brother and I worked together on a score for an episode of Adventure Time pretty recently. And that was cool to have a composition credit. I enjoyed it. But I will say that, like, my music, I've never treated as like a career path. And, I have a lot of friends who do music for a living, and I don't want that life in particular.
You don't envy them?
No. Well, at least like the touring musician, that's not something that I want to be. A composer would be interesting, but I really think that, I feel like if I got any gig, I'd just pass it along to Dory.
Right.
Yeah.
Your better half musically.
He is, yeah.
When's the first time you worked together in a serious manner?
Just that.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if we work together well exactly.
I never thought to ask that. I just assumed it went well because it existed, which is naive.
No, I mean, the thing is that Dory is so clear on what he wants to do musically, and he can do whatever he thinks.
Oh, that's a bit shocking to me, considering his lack of clarity. I just feel like
no.
clarity is not his MO in terms of, from what I've understood, in terms of other things.
Maybe not his humor or personality, but like musically, I feel like he can have a thought and do it. Whereas I'm not like so technically skilled with music. I'm like a tinkerer, and I make experimental electronic composition. And so I just kind of like play around until I find things that I like.
Yeah, it's funny. Is that the ultimate goal? I mean, for me,
Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah. But it makes me wonder if you become so technically proficient, do you become just a translator of a mental image to the end result? I prefer some process talk back, but I do think it.
I think you and I are similar in this regard, artistically, visually, that we kind of like find the thing we're doing as we're doing it.
Yeah.
But there's other artists who just like they are so technically adept at translating the idea. It's like almost fully formed in their mind.
Yeah, it sounds boring to make for me.
I have no idea.
It's probably really gratifying.
Sometimes I look at it and I'm just like, man, that must be fun to just have that ability.
Who's coming to mind when you think like that?
Oh, I don't know. We don't need to name. I mean, my brother. Like when I see him play piano, I wish I could. I was actually. It's pretty interesting. The past year, they've been. My brother started playing classical music with a few people, and they sight read the music. So they're playing the music for the first time. They're hearing the music that they're playing for the first time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
They have never heard this piece of music and they can just play it.
Huh.
And like, it's almost hard to comprehend.
Yeah. That's very foreign to me.
Right. It's like such a different way of thinking. But it is like, for them, it's like reading a language, and they can just, it comes out.
Yeah. It's interesting to me how there's no, I think we've talked about it quite a bit, the differences and similarities between making music and art.
Yeah.
And that kind of language or mathematics, at least in how we make art, doesn't seem terribly present. There's symbols that we repeat often in rhythmic ways.
Yeah. I feel like you and I both have this sort of like alchemical approach.
Yeah.
Where we're trying to like spin something into something. And we have these like personal symbols and mythologies, and it's almost like a summoning of some sort.
Yeah. I wish it was a little more. I wish I knew what I was summoning a bit more.
Also, it would be cool if it was more like a literal summoning and there were like sparks flying everywhere. And,
Yeah, that would be cool. I think if we were in like a more unified culture of symbols, it might be more like that.
Yeah.
Like I think we're building personal mythologies while like disrespectfully remixing previous symbols. It gets a little confusing to me as to what my aim is. The more I gain respect for those symbols, if that makes sense. It's like almost like,
yeah, it does.
Yeah, the more I respect their potency, I question why I'm even fucking with them.
They're calling. Even if they're calling from like Pinterest or whatever,
Right. Even if they're calling just aesthetically, which is a concern sometimes for me.
Yeah.
It's just cool and I want to make it cooler. It's like the lamest reason to make something. It's basically fashion, but I'm trying to get away from that.
I just watched a documentary about Ed Hardy, the tattoo artist.
Yeah.
And I didn't know much about him except for his clothing brand, which I always associated with like douche culture or whatever. But it turns out that he's actually kind of a cool guy, and a thoughtful artist. And I think tattoo artists are like so like they're almost like folk artists. Like they share the symbols.
Yeah, they're like traditionalists.
Yeah, they're traditionalists. Yeah. And he has like a comment at the end of the documentary where he says like something like, basically he doesn't even believe in originality. Like no one invented anything, and we're all just participating in a culture.
Yeah, I hate that view.
Yeah,
I do, because it's a half truth that sounds true. The reason I think that is there's clearly an aspect of being and becoming to all things So like, obviously we're not just in a circle that's going around. At the very least, we're in a spiral. So there's some vertical aspect that's changing, or, you know, like
that's fair.
Things are changing. They're definitely changing.
Things are changing, but I would say that like the individuals we're all just caught up in that spiral to some degree.
Yeah. I think that's humility, acknowledging that. But I also think that, I lost it. It's gone.
Pardon me. Spiraled out.
You took it away. No. You know what I was going to say? It's like, it's so obviously true when you meet someone who is an original person that it exists. You know, I remember having an argument in your kitchen about Bob Dylan and authentic personas, authentic identities. And it's like, yeah, with, Marmalade Mountain or whatever the fuck.
Zach Fishman.
Yeah,
I've argued with him about Bob Dylan too.
So obviously, viscerally true that there are authentic people. And I feel the same way about original people. And I don't want to diminish that and just say they're better at remixing.
But even they don't come out of nowhere.
No.
No, they're still like...
No, but it's
they might have some fresh take on a tradition, but they're still...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like saying you don't have free will because you didn't choose to be born or weren't, you know, you didn't arrange what the human body is. But obviously, I think they're compatible, that you can be remixing things and then suddenly, because clearly when you're young, you do remix things. I will admit that. Like, I think it's pretty clear who people's influences are when they're young. And then they somehow transcend it. Not necessarily because you could argue it's just so many ingredients went in there that now you can't tell. But I would say that those get poured into a vessel that is unique to the individual. So it's both things, you know? Sure. But yeah, talking about summoning, Ed Hardy is funny because it's like, he's, as you so harshly put it, he summoned douche culture. And I think that's kind of interesting as to those unforeseen consequences to your aesthetic.
Well, yeah. I mean, you really can't control your audience.
Yeah.
Though, in his defense, I think he just like licensed some of his designs for a clothing company and it just happened to take off. And he enjoys the financial rewards of it. I don't know to what degree he was involved or concerned.
Yeah. No, I just find that interesting. Those peripheral things that you can't control. Right. And then you either Freddie Mercury it or Kurt Cobain it. And like the only mature response is Freddie Mercury.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
You either resent the people who like your work because they're, I don't know what Cobain's justification is, they're lame consumers, or you love them dearly and you kind of have a healthy relationship with those people who feed you.
That sounds preferable.
It sounds like something you can control. I mean, I think we both feel at times with the scene, whatever that may be. But, like, I don't know if there's an illustration scene, but the comic scene we've talked about before where you probably aren't going to feel like you fit in. I mean, I don't trust the people who do, but maybe I'm just immature on that,
Well, we all have our cliques, don't we? You and I have our clique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Small.
Yeah, we keep it tight.
Remote. It's a shame it's remote.
Yeah. Life be that way.
Yeah, so talk about the Shrimp House, talking about remote, because you used to be part of a very tight group.
Yeah, I mean...
Physically. Break it down.
Sure. I mean, starting in my late 20s, I moved into a house with a bunch of friends, mostly musicians. And we had a kind of like art fraternity family house for 6 years. And it was a beautiful time. And even as I was living through it, I knew it was the good old days.
Mm-hmm.
And when my father died, I moved out. And that was the end of that chapter. But it was a really lovely chapter. We lived in this nice but also a little wonky house in Silver Lake on a hill. We had a music studio in the garage. We played lots of Telephone Pictionary. People just came through. Had a great time. And now it's sort of changed hands. Only Ian still lives there. He's a musician who is a close friend of mine, and he's become like the elder statesman of the house, but he's also always on tour. And now there's all these like new versions. There's another long-haired guy who draws living there.
Right. There's just,
it's funny. Yeah.
Just B-movie versions of each person being replaced.
Yeah.
But it is funny to think. I was thinking about this during the wedding. We had Neve and I just went to a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about, and this sounds like this is true of the Shrimp House, that type of thing will never happen again. That there's a certain, especially in our 30s, there's just no going back. There will be no Shrimp House again.
No.
For you, it was demarcated by your father's death.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, you don't want to go back to the Shrimp House, do you?
Well, no. I mean, look, when my father died, it changed my priorities so quickly. I was like, okay, fun time is over, you know?
You absorbed his spirit in a way.
Well, in a sense, but I just like, it was time to take care of things, to take care of family.
Yeah, I guess I find that it's like, I'm not even speaking spiritually here, but I do find that amazingly literal that, suddenly you have to help with the money situation where he was doing it. Or suddenly it just shapes you into a man by his absence. And
well, he was quite the man. So we have a lot of duties to fill between my brother and I.
Yes.
And it's hard to fill those shoes. But yeah, it changed my priorities really overnight. And no, I wouldn't want to go back. It would feel totally inappropriate.
Right.
And it did pretty quickly, I did have to go back to move my things out and all that stuff. And it was just like, okay, this is over.
Right.
It was a beautiful time and it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that kind of incubation, I hope to provide spaces like that later in my life, because maybe you do well with that isolation you were saying, or solitary creation, but obviously
to a degree.
To a degree. You live in a house now with Dory, and it's like,
yeah,
I'm sure you're bouncing it off each other consistently. Mm-hmm. But I don't think this, that kind of thing has to end per se, but I definitely think Shrimp House is dead. And I definitely think the thing we experienced in Tuscany is dead. And it's kind of, I kept thinking of that Green Day song that I heard at my 8th grade graduation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the name of it, but
I walk a lonely road.
No, something unpredictable. Maybe it's called. This is 8th grade.
Yeah.
This is way back.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to think of how to carry that spirit without having it hamper me.
Yeah. Let me know if you figure it out.
I think the only way to do it is to give it back, like I'm going to try to with the art center, to provide those events, those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But also to somehow maintain my own practice in a real way. Sometimes I wonder.
Yeah. Maybe we're being a little fatalistic and, we'll still have these things. I'm thinking that even now, with Dory living here, I have musicians coming through all the time and my friends come and visit and I go visit them. And it's, it's not like it's.
No,
it's
yeah,
not,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not over.
Life goes on.
Certainly. I just think, like you said, it's a priority shift. And
yeah.
That's what interests me is the point in some ways to be undisturbed by those priority shifts. I look at certain artists and I'm amazed by how consistent their output is.
Mm-hmm.
maybe because they anchor to one project for their whole life, or, maybe that's the purpose of anchoring to something like Berserk, where it's just like, no matter what those priority shifts or life events you can't predict come in, you can always filter it through this one book. I envy that focus. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the most sustained thing you've made?
I mean, it's got to be Old Growth.
Right. And it's because illustration and the way we're taught, and this is not a knock, it's a great skill that a lot of people don't have, is like, you're kind of programmed to turn around the thing in one day. And so you don't have like long distance running muscles. You just have sprinter muscles. And
yeah, I mean, I'm used to short deadlines and working in different styles and changing it up for what the project needs. And
right. It's couple that with the speed of social media and the gratification of it, and I think you get a very difficult obstacle to a long sustained project, which I've been trying to figure that out, like how to do both. I mean, I just don't have any interest in social media right now, but I think there's obviously a great function to it in terms of visibility. But
sure,
besides Old Growth, which we could talk about later, what do you think the most sustained project you've done is?
I mean, I don't know how satisfying an answer this will be, but it might just be my relationship to my sketchbooks.
Yes.
Like, I have these journals that I've been producing my whole life, basically, since I was like 9 or 10 at least. And they're like the through thread of my life in some way.
Has the digital process taken away from those at all?
Well, there's periods of time when I'm focused on, quote, work that slows those down. And when I notice that that's slowing down, I make an effort to get back into it, because it is kind of like, it's like a pure type of thing that I set aside for myself. It's just like, it's practice. It's some sort of like meditation,
Yeah. And it's important to you that it happens physically.
Yeah. They're also like time machines, like I look through them every few months, and like a lot of my life is stored in there, and I'm thankful for that I have that kind of log.
You write diary entries in there too?
Occasionally, but sometimes I'll like write like a big heavy one with the intention of making it a habit, but it doesn't become one. More like passing thoughts. I'll write like little things that people say. If I'm sitting with a friend or a family member and drawing a picture of them, maybe I like write the things that they said. I have some pretty funny ones. And I was looking at one of my dad, and he was talking about how he was basically arguing that like symbolism doesn't exist, and that like a dead fruit is just that, nothing else. There's no symbolism to be read in a piece of dead fruit.
Wow, that's like he chose the most.
Right.
There's so much you can get out of that.
Right. I'll have to show you that.
It sounds like he's just playing there.
Yes and no.
What would you call that? That's just pure literalism, huh? It's just like.
Yeah, my dad was a funny guy.
I don't even think a human can operate on that level, like for sustained periods of time.
No one really does. It's not like he couldn't understand metaphor, really. I think he was kind of trolling.
Oh, yes.
But yeah. But I'm thankful to have those logs, because, it's like I have like a little window into that conversation in that moment. So it's great to have those sketchbooks. And, the past week, actually, I've kind of like been really intentional about getting back into it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's important. They're also,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like the place my ideas are kind of like born from. Like they're like it's like an incubator.
Yeah, it's undeniably good practice.
Yeah.
I don't do it, honestly. I haven't done it in a long time.
Mm.
I have like one or two that I'm like, oh, those are like very complete and beautiful objects, but I can't explain why.
Yeah,
I just
you know,
don't.
I used to try to make them these like art objects in and of themselves, especially when I was like in college, my early 20s.
Mhm.
I would like paint in them and like make handbound books and try to make them something beautiful. But now they're really not that. Just buy a journal and draw real loose and um, just let them be a place for my brain to wander.
Yeah, your sketchbooks are much like mine are embarrassing in a way. Like I'm not even trying to draw well, I don't think. And the times where I wanted them to be cool, they're cool looking, but I almost think I defeated the purpose by trying to do that.
Yeah, I especially with a sketchbook, I do think that like over focus on getting it to be like a cool aesthetic thing, like it does kind of get in the way of just your brain exploring.
Yeah, and like,
and you should be willing and okay with the drawing being bad. It's
right.
It's, okay.
It's why I don't. So I remember you used to draw at a bar and get free drinks. But
yeah.
I'm like philosophically opposed to that.
You're opposed to getting free drinks or drawing at a bar? Which part?
I don't. Drawing in public where someone might see it, even if it's an attractive woman or something, I don't. You know,
Michael, at the time, that was my only strategy.
Yeah, well, what other strategy do you have?
I was hoping some beautiful woman would see my drawings and be like, "Hello, stranger."
You have another strategy now?
I mean, now
still the only strategy.
I mean, now I just have a long-term girlfriend.
Okay.
But
I feel like it still was the only strategy and it worked.
I mean, yeah, ultimately.
It's funny to think, I typically only think of drawing as an extension of my thinking, especially when I'm sketching furniture or whatever. It's just like a visualizing what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, like a tool.
Yeah. And that's why I think I've moved away from it as like my main identity as its utility increased. I started to think I could use this for other stuff than drawing obscure comic books. And there's, good and bad to that. But
right.
Your utility is far more multifaceted. Just from thinking about this alone, you have a journaling utility. You have a career that earns you money based off it. You also have a way to get free drinks and attention and social bonding. You draw people when you're around them.
Sure.
So you put a lot of weight on its back, and I suppose it makes it stronger.
Yeah, I mean, for so long it was just like it was like foundational to my identity. Was drawing, and
is it not?
I mean, that was tested this past year,
right?
And
did you draw your way out of it?
I've been drawing my way out of it, and I'm back. But this year, for the first time in my life, I had a period where like I just did not want to.
Mm-hmm. And what got you? Did Judaism pull you through that?
No.
The rituals of Judaism didn't pull you through that?
I mean, the rituals of Judaism helped me out with grief, but the longer term grief, the long game, wasn't quite doing that. And drawing is like the spiritual practice of my life in a sense.
What makes it what makes it spiritual?
What makes it spiritual is that it's like I'm giving when it's good, when I'm like actually like really present for it, I'm like giving myself over to something.
To something.
Yeah, like I'm giving my energy and time and attention and patience to a creative pursuit. And when it's really good, in a sense, I like disappear and just become the thing. And like that feeling, that kind of flow state, meditative thing is the thing I've been chasing my whole life. And
it makes me wonder if we owe more in terms of the end product, because it's a bit of a one-sided transaction, you know. I would agree with the general assessment. And, you know, let's say if we're doing it for illustration or for money or something.
Yeah.
I would much rather be putting it into some place of worship or church or something that I felt good about, because then it would seem to be a more holistic feedback loop. It's a little unsatisfying and disappointing. I don't know if that makes sense. I love the personalness of it. Like, expound upon that.
Like, and that's why I love the notebook so much, because like it's a process of just like really refining and getting to know myself. And like the worst moments are like the ones where I'm like envious of other artists and like trying to draw like them or wishing I had their ability instead of like trying to draw like myself.
Yeah. But this sounds ultimately selfish, and I'm not saying that in a critical way, but like,
I mean, it is.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be. That's what I'm trying to figure out, is because again, I'm trying to figure out this maturity angle, and maturity is definitely marked by selfless action. And
I agree.
It's very interesting. What I mean by the church or the place of worship is, since we're getting it from this source that we are marking as spiritual, it seems logical you would be building up a structure or a place that then could potentially provide it to others. And I suppose that can occur when people see art and they're inspired to make art.
I think so.
But this isn't sufficient to me. One of my friends.
You're an ambitious guy, my friend.
Supposedly, that's what they say. But one of my friends just convinced me that like you can't collapse all these practices into one thing. Like there's true worship, and there's art making, and they're not the same thing. We don't have to get into that. It's kind of a complicated topic, but it humbled me a bit. And I was like, okay, maybe I was being convenient here with this kind of collapsing of everything into one thing I like doing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, it does. You know, I guess ultimately I'm not too concerned about the larger religious aspect. It's more like I have this gift. I want to use it.
What's the responsibility? That's what I'm getting at. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but if you have a gift, you have a responsibility.
Yeah, I believe that. And I don't know. I think we all should try to be the best versions of ourselves that we can. Creativity is a way I've found to develop that idea.
Certainly we should use it to our maximum potential.
Yeah.
I guess answering that is so difficult, especially in the context of something like design or illustration, which is client-based.
Sure. I mean, I'll be totally blunt that it's not easy to access the spirit in that context.
You have to access something else, and I don't know what you would call it, but it's...
When you're doing that, you just have to access skill and efficiency, you know? And just like...
It's more than that, right? It's like human. It's a type of communication.
Sure.
Like being a good illustrator is very difficult, and you notice it when when I've art directed people for certain jobs, and I've always like kind of shit on art direction because it's, I don't know, usually failed illustrators do it. And maybe that's why I'm doing it. But,
I've gained some respect for it over the past year. It's harder than it looks.
Same. But because it's like parenting almost, but also a good illustrator is really good at communication. and maybe there's something magical there that one hones over time. It's not talking to a muse, but it's talking to another person, which is far more of a pain in the ass, I would suggest. So I do respect both illustration and art direction more.
Yeah.
Over time. I think most art directors are trash, but probably most illustrators are too,
it's a hard thing to do, so only a certain number of people are truly good at it.
Yeah, maybe that's everything. Yeah. Not to flatten it out, but like, I guess from the outside, it just looks like, oh, about people who make cool art, and you picked them to do it.
Yeah,
that's at its laziest. What it seems like.
Now, now that I'm in my position working with YouTube and like have had to like sometimes try to find artists to hire for projects, you realize that like a couple of years go by, you're not in the loop anymore. You have to stay on top of it to know who's out there and who's the right fit.
Oh, we're not in the loop. That's what I've been trying to say. We're not cool. See, we weren't cool ever. We just for a brief moment there convinced people we were, I think. But it's funny are you supposed to be the guy who shows up to the punk show at 50 in skinny jeans? Or are you supposed to be, you just don't show up anymore? And I'm leaning towards not showing up,
I love not showing up. Yeah.
Like, do we need, for you, maybe occupationally, you need to be in the loop, but I'm either going to try to make my own loop or just stop. It's a very funny thing of what grace looks like in that context. Do you accept the limitations of age? Even your style starts to calcify, but that calcification allows you to access different things, maybe deeper content, or you can focus on narrative, as opposed to always trying to. It's almost like dating someone every 3 months, Oh, there's a new way I could draw, a new medium I can pick up. And we justify it with this particular myth about artists and their liberated spirit. But,
sure.
I don't know. More and more I question it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I do I consider art like some sort of path to like knowing yourself. Illustration, I don't know if it's that. It might be, like you said, it's a path to communicate. And you would hope that over time, as you age, you get to know yourself better and better. I fear that kind of calcification. We were talking about like something like Berserk, where you like devote your whole life to a book. On one, I totally respect that, but I could never do that. I just the idea of doing like the same drawings, or like drawing the same way for my whole life. It's just it would get so boring.
Yeah, there must be a personality component to it. But getting to know yourself via the process, I have found that collaboration is probably a more rapid process for doing that. I don't know if you agree with that, but
I certainly feel like I came to understand a lot more about myself through our collaborations.
Yes, but also with Ballmer. Like for me, maybe I'm thinking of it differently, but
I understand Ballmer less and less.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
No, I'm just kidding.
No. I'll interview him. But it just became clear to me, and that's why I still enjoy it, is
collaboration.
Yeah. And that's why I like running a company with someone. I like working with people.
Yeah.
Because only through that comparison can you see what you really are. So it's like so cliche, but you find yourself through others. And
your strengths become apparent, what you can bring to it.
Your weaknesses and those limitations. It struck me that as I was blinded to that when I was drawing alone.
Yeah.
It's a fine line.
Sure.
You can definitely lose yourself. You can definitely
Yeah.
lose yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think of the people, I know a lot of people who work in animation.
Mm-hmm.
They're very talented people. And then after a couple of years, you don't see them making work for themselves anymore. Because they're working so hard and they're tired. And
I used to be so critical of that. And
yeah, I'm softer on it now too. It's hard.
Well, you're probably softer because you realize that life circumstances might, one, put you in that position.
Yeah.
I have no two to say to that, actually. But I think also I'm just wondering if there's something beautiful about the sacrifice. I had such an individualistic view of art making because it seems to be that the peak of that, the peak of individualism is the artist, I would say. And
it was for a 100-year stretch.
I think it still should be in some way.
Yeah.
But I guess I'd have to hear how those people feel. I still lament people's potential who get absorbed by that thing because they typically get absorbed by an unworthy system.
Well, yeah, I was about to say it's a beautiful sacrifice if you're sacrificing it for something beautiful.
Like a Miyazaki film or something.
Right.
Yeah. But you
can be proud of that.
And those people probably have a lot of mixed feelings about that. But
I'm sure.
I don't think, first of all, I don't have the trust, but I don't think there's anything, at least like Ballmer, he loved Adventure Time. And so surely Adventure Time was a worthy altar to sacrifice at,
Sure.
Most people aren't in that position. You're working for YouTube. I have no idea what you think about YouTube. We don't need to get into it, but that's the reality of the thing. And
yeah,
it's not as romantic as it sounds when you're younger, I suppose.
No. Look, I mean, when you're a professional illustrator, I think you just, to some degree, you take what you can get. And you just hope that you can make a living, and take the opportunities that come to you. And I don't quite know where I was going, but
well, I don't think to be fair, I don't think either of us, I did illustration for a much shorter time period, but we didn't have to sacrifice too much, because we were being, at least I certainly was being poached from the comic scene. And the expectation was kind of like, you just draw cool shit and then you're going to do that for this article,
Yeah.
So we weren't run through some kind of assembly line.
No.
And you got your hands or feet. That's fun.
Yeah. Well, that was working with a friend, working with Sarah Rothberg. I've always been happy that for most of my career, I've been able to have a good balance between working for other people and working for myself. And I never lost a personal practice. Yeah. It's been challenged more these days, but
that's why I was trying to talk to Jesse. It's like that, having kids.
Yeah.
On top of, imagine your current circumstance, you have kids. Mm-hmm. And then the probability of preserving that personal practice early on seems tremendously difficult.
Could be.
And it's just a very interesting moment for artists, I think.
Yeah.
But in those 10 years of illustration, what stands out as your hands or feet? Is that one of the highlights?
No, not to be honest. What am I most proud of? I really am proud of Old Growth. It's the thing that made us the least money of any project, but it's my baby in a sense that I'm.
Oh, your baby?
Our baby, Michael.
I think you said your, and then you take the Y off behind my back. Well, that's not an illustration in the illustration career, no. But I think what that encapsulates is part of that bonding utility, which is probably why we got it done, and probably why it's so hard to get a comic done on your own, mm-hmm. is because you're forced into the complete opposite, most inhuman circumstance.
We talked about it a lot as we were making it, that our shared responsibility to each other, like really pulled it through.
Pushed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I've let myself down on numerous occasions, but I didn't want to let you down. So I was ready to work on it.
Yeah. I mean, we've got to find ways to leverage that, because that's the key. I mean, there's also the whole thing is like, if you get stuck on a comic and you're doing it alone, you're stuck. If you have someone else working with you, they're probably not going to be stuck at the same time, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But I'd love to be able to build accountability into the personal projects, the kind of accountability you should have in school if you got your shit together.
Right.
We lose that. And even like I was saying with the Shrimp House, when you see other people making, I'm sure Dory's always making, but that is very, very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. It helps to be around creative people. There's both like an inspiration and competition aspect to it that I think is healthy.
Yeah, I feel like I need to be more competitive, which I love to be, but
yeah,
when you're not staring down the enemy's eyes physically, it's a little harder.
Yeah. And, that was a beautiful thing about that time that we had in the Bay Area when we were younger, when we were drawing with Jesse. Like, we would get together at least once a week and need to be able to draw.
Yeah.
And, so that was a big motivator to push and draw in my free time as well.
Yeah, we have to try to recreate that somehow.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great.
Maybe put money in there somehow to like force each other. I feel like that's a great way to force the issue. You have to have
how are you going to get money in this?
I don't know. It's like you have to have a 30-page comic done by this date. Otherwise, you owe me $100. Of course, it can't be scribbled.
$100.
No, $100 will do something to you.
I'm just playing around.
Oh, you're too big for that now.
I'm too big for $100.
You got YouTube.
You got to put $10,000 on it.
How long are you going to work for YouTube?
I don't know. A year went by quickly, man.
In a good way?
In a good way. Look,
That's
I mean,
cool.
having a job in this time, it's like there's a sacrifice to it, and it's also a great stabilizing force.
That's why I'm just asking, like, maybe you don't think too far ahead.
Yeah, I'm not a 5-year planner guy like you.
Come on.
I know.
I'm a 10-year guy.
Ooh. Man, I get to I plan towards the weekend. Maybe.
You got that? Come on.
I'm really not a big planner. It's
I implore you
to plan.
Yeah, imagine all the things you could do in 10 years.
I know. No, I mean, I really am sort of like even just like my becoming an illustrator, artist, just like, it's all just like stuff that happened to me in a way. It's not that I'm not.
It's fate?
It's not fate. It's just circumstance. And
that sounds like so unromantic.
Well, I'm sorry.
I don't buy it.
It's not that I'm not romantic, and it's not that like that didn't involve work and some intention, but like I've never been someone who sees 10 years into the future and thinks about how to get there. I'm always like, where am I and how am I doing?
Yeah, well, we should work on that.
Okay. I'll try.
Even, I mean, I guess Old Growth wasn't like we sat down, we're like, in 3 years, this will be like
Old Growth's the perfect example. It just fucking happened. Like, we were, hired for that album cover, and we were like, what if we drew again? Like, we missed drawing together, so we just did it. And all of a sudden we had a book.
Yeah. That's all fine and dandy, but when applied to life, especially at this stage, it kind of doesn't work, I don't think.
I'm not saying this is the most responsible way.
I just feel as we go, the nets are being set, by many, many forces, and the only way around them is planning, as boring and mundane as that sounds.
How unromantic.
Is that unromantic? Sounds very thrilling.
I just wanted to throw it back at you.
I just think, especially to preserve, it just gets harder and harder to preserve the spirit that is required to make art, I think. I feel like you might have to get a little defensive.
Yeah, that I agree with. And, I've been experiencing, like I said, like for the first time, sort of like challenges to my creative desire. And I am like intentional about it, how to protect it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you're right. I'll get my 10-year plan going, because I want to be that old man who's still doing it. And those like the artists I admire, like the people who are just have like these lifelong obsessions and still do it.
Yes, I mean, if you have an obsession, I suppose it will be there. For me, it's like no matter what, because obsession to me implies a very deep compulsion. But I don't know if I have an obsession, but I have something I want to protect. And potentially, we just have to hold each other accountable. Like shame is a great driving force, and I'm losing it in this area. And I don't like that.
Okay, send me your drawings. I'll shame you.
Yeah.
We can shame each other.
Yeah. That's what I recommend to young illustrators. Those shameless ones. There's so many of them.
Yeah. I mean, no, having a group of friends that you really trust their opinions is invaluable.
And you fear in some way.
Yeah, like real respect.
Like they're going to leave you in the dust.
I mean, like meeting you was kind of like that. Like, I had friends from art school, but they weren't quite like doing the same aesthetic thing as me. It was like a little different. So like when we met, it was like, okay, here's someone who kind of can see what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. No, it's a very important historical moment.
Yeah.
People don't realize it yet.
Well, hopefully they will, Michael.
Yeah. No, I like to think we might be written out of history.
Not if we make another book, Old Growth 2. The Growthening.
Oh, the Growthening.
Yeah.
And that's all for that one. Music by Dory Bavarsky and Mingja Chen. Next week, we've got Dang Wayne Olson.